Hi, you're watching Goodfellas History. I'm one of your hosts, Garrett,
Davis?
And I'm Nick.
and today I want to talk about the Electoral College. Briefly go into what it is, and then go into some alternatives to the Electoral College. I want to try to get through the information as quick as possible because I don't have like a whole lot, and then we can have a discussion after about the whole thing. So I want to start off with this archives.gov article. What is the Electoral College? And I'm just going to read this whole thing. It's just a few paragraphs.
It looks like State Department talking points.
Yeah, you with the CIA?
You know what? Damn it, you guys. I'm compromised. Shit. All right.
Pull me out now!
I'm gonna...
The real reason he's a Biden stan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
His rose on his hat's not even red.
Oh, my God. I am going...
Yes, please continue. I apologize.
To start now. All right, so what is the Electoral College? The Electoral College is a process, not a place. So just so we're all aware, the Founding Fathers established it in the Constitution in part as a compromise between the election of the president by a vote in Congress and election of the president by a popular vote of qualified citizens. What is the process? The Electoral College process consists of the selection of the electors, the meeting of the electors where they vote for president and vice president, and the counting of the electoral votes by Congress. How many electors are there? How are they distributed among the states? The Electoral College consists of 538 electors. A majority of 270 electoral votes is required to elect the president. Your state has the number of electors as it does members in its congressional delegation, one for each member in the House of Representatives plus 2 senators. And then read more about that if you want to. The District of Columbia is allocated 3 electors and treated like a state for purposes of the Electoral College under the 23rd Amendment of the Constitution. For this reason, in the following discussion, the word state also refers to the District of Columbia and governor to the mayor of the District of Columbia. How are my electors chosen? What are their qualifications, and how do they decide who to vote for? Each candidate running for president in your state has his or her own group of electors known as a slate. The slates are generally chosen by the candidate's political party in your state, but state laws vary on how the electors are selected and what their responsibilities are. And then you can read more about it by clicking that. What happens in the general election? Why should I vote? The general election is held every 4 years on the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. When you vote for a presidential candidate, you are actually voting for your candidate's preferred electors. Most states have a winner-takes-all system that awards all electors to the presidential candidate who wins the state's popular vote. However, Maine and Nebraska each have a variation of proportional representation. And I'm going to finish off the rest of this article, but I do want to jump over here just to kind of explain that a little bit more. So all states except for Maine and Nebraska, this is also an archives.gov thing, all states except for Maine and Nebraska have a winner-take-all policy where the state looks only at the overall winner of the statewide popular vote. Maine and Nebraska, however, appoint individual electors based on the winner of the popular vote for each congressional district, and then 2 electors based on the winner of the overall statewide popular vote. Even though Maine and Nebraska don't use a winner-take-all system, it is rare for either state to have a split vote. Each has done so once, Nebraska in 2008 and Maine in 2016.
Interesting. It's a lot more like recent history with that.
Yeah. And so those 2 states have a little bit of a different a different way of going about it,
Fun
which
fact,
is interesting.
Nebraska also is the only state with a unicameral state legislature. Yeah, they don't have a state senate. They just have the state legislature.
Yeah, that's
okay.
interesting.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Fun fact.
Damn, Nebraska. All right.
Damn, Nebraska.
All right, last thing here for this article. What happens after the general election? After the general election, your governor prepares a certificate of ascertainment listing the names of all the individuals on the slates for each candidate. The certificate of ascertainment also lists the number of votes each individual received and shows which individuals are appointed as your state's electors. Your state certificate of ascertainment is sent to NARA as part of the official records of the presidential election. The meetings of the electors take place on the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December after the general election. The electors meet in their respective states, where they cast their votes for president and vice president on separate ballots. Your state's electors' votes are recorded on a certificate of vote, which is prepared at the meeting by the electors. Your state's certificate of vote is sent to Congress, where the votes are counted and NARA as part of the official records of the presidential election. Each state's electoral votes are counted in a joint session of Congress on the 6th of January in the year following the meeting of the electors. Of course, unless it's interrupted by a bunch of terrorists. Yeah. Members of the House and Senate meet in the House chamber to conduct the official count of electoral votes. The Vice President, as President of the Senate, presides over the count and announces the results of the vote. The President of the Senate then declares which persons, if any, have been elected President and Vice President of the United States. The President-elect takes the oath of office and is sworn in as the President of the United States on January 20th in the year following the general election. So that's our system that we have now. Just a little... This really isn't a part of kind of my flow or what I really want to talk about. But I do think this is kind of interesting. So after the 2020 census, the electoral map is going to be updated. And I do want to just kind of talk about this just real quick as more of just like a kind of fun fact or whatever. Or maybe not fun, depending on how you look at this. So, which states gained or lost Electoral College votes? So, the states that are losing a vote are California, West Virginia, Minnesota, New York, Illinois, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. So they're losing an Electoral College vote. The states that are gaining one vote are Florida, North Carolina, Oregon, Colorado, and Montana. And then one state that's getting 2 extra votes is Texas, because they deserve it.
Noticing a lot of red states over there.
Yeah.
Well, it's a matter of population growth.
It is.
So it's proportion by population. So as people who believe in democracy, I guess that this is something that's more beneficial, but I mean...
Yeah.
The reality is that also some of the reasons why we saw the kind of growth in these areas that you see right there, the reason why you're seeing California and New York and Illinois decrease has a lot to do with the fact that austerity programs that were implemented from 2010 on kind of stopped the development and growth of the economy. So people turn to alternative sources of income and probably move to other states as a result of the lack of jobs.
So I just thought that was pretty interesting. Just kind of want to throw that out there that in the starting 2024 election, we're going to see an updated electoral map. For the next decade, this is how it's going to change. So now I want to move on to the alternatives to the Electoral College. So this is the Edionga. I don't know how that's kind of broken up, but this right here.com alternatives Editonga, sure. This is an opinion piece, but I do think it is pretty interesting, and it has 4 separate alternatives, so we can kind of
the edition GA.
Oh, the edition GA, okay. Thank you. All right. Although, and I think it's by Ada Kaplan and Angie Wang from November 30th, 2020. Although there are certainly some positive things about the Electoral College, we must remember that this is a system that has been reevaluated time and time again, while being altered slightly to further improve our government. As a country, it's time to look at some possible alternatives for this system while keeping the values of America in mind. So the first one, popular vote. One alternative to the Electoral College that's been widely advocated for lately is a direct popular vote.
Yay!
The people vote, and the candidate with the most votes wins. So that's like more of a direct democracy.
Yes.
So the argument behind this is based primarily on the assumption that people voting have some sort of interest in politics, and their votes are what should decide the election rather than the state's votes. Unlike the Electoral College, where Pennsylvania has 20 votes no matter what, in a popular vote, if very few people in the state of Pennsylvania vote, then Pennsylvania won't have as much of an impact on the overall election. People want to feel like their vote matters. Republicans in California or Democrats in Texas know that when they go to the polls, they're most likely not making an impact on the election. Swing states can decide the election no matter if 10% or 100% of eligible voters win. And a popular vote could solve this problem. However, there are some clear flaws with the popular vote system. all of which were discovered by the Founding Fathers during the creation of the Electoral College. A candidate could claim several impossible things during the campaigning period, all with the intention of making every single citizen feel that they would thrive under this person's rule, leading to a growing mob of people deciding the election, which I kind of feel like that already happens anyway.
Yeah.
Well, not just that, that's a kind of stupid argument. Because, like, let's say that they do that, and they don't achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, politicians could do that anyway.
They do. I mean, Donald Trump did that. He
They
said
could do it anyway.
Mexico was going to pay for the border wall.
Like,
that's an impossible thing to promise.
Yeah, like, what the hell does that mean?
So, yeah, I will admit, this article, some of the opinions, I think,
they're 24.
Really,
they're 24, okay? You know, like, they're rad libs. We'll let them go.
I think maybe they just are trying to be balanced in a way where they're like, okay, we have to have, because there's positives and negatives that they list for all of these.
Yeah, but I mean, like, there's really no negatives to this. That's the best you could pull out for as a negative for a direct popular vote. I'm sorry. Like,
yeah,
you already have that.
Yeah, we do already have that. So yes, like, this article isn't like completely. This is an opinion piece after all, but it does list 4 alternatives, like I said. So I just wanted to. It's more just throwing out the idea, and then we can discuss after we talk about all of them. Not necessarily like, oh, these 2 people said this, so now we're gonna go with this. You know.
In addition, the U.S. has never been a direct democracy. In the past, no nation has ever tried for a true democracy has succeeded.
Yeah, much of America has concluded that although the Electoral College isn't perfect, there needs to be an intermediary level between the people and the president. So what are some other solutions? So basically they're like, okay, yeah, that won't work. What are the other solutions?
I just sit here and once again, I press back on that, like...
Yeah.
Like, much of America has concluded that although electoral isn't... Like, who? Like, in the past, like true democracy... Like, democracy is an ideal. Like...
Yeah.
It's a principle. Like, I'm sorry.
Well...
We've become more democratic over time.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Garrett. I'm sorry.
I feel like with the popular vote, I mean, again, I want to try to maybe like throw them all out there, and then we can kind of discuss all of them.
Okay, yeah, do that. I'll shut up. I'll shut up.
Yeah. No, you're good. Congressional districts is the next one. So the congressional district system is already implemented in Maine and Nebraska, though has never actually impacted the election. In this system, districts are allowed a certain number of votes, along with an extra 2 votes awarded to the candidate that wins the popular vote in that particular state. This system solves the problem of larger cities deciding the election, as districts that aren't as densely populated rarely have an impact on the popular vote, depending on the state. We saw a situation like this play out in Pennsylvania this election, where nearly all of the counties of Pennsylvania voted Republican, yet Philadelphia and Pittsburgh voted Democrat, leading the state's 20 votes to go to the Blue Party. However, for those advocating to abolish the Electoral College for the reasons mentioned previously, this system can make things even worse. The congressional district method is essentially an even more rigid version of the Electoral College, dividing the country up into even smaller sections. If this current electoral system leads to candidates funneling all of their campaigning into swing states, a congressional district system would no doubt lead to the presidential candidate holding nearly all of their campaign events in a single congressional district. Though this system may improve conditions in 1 or 2 specific states, it is most certainly not a step above the Electoral College and should not be considered. So they're saying, here's another option, but then the conclusion they come to is should not be considered.
Yeah, they're like, F that.
Which I kind of agree. I don't know if I would want to have this be implemented in every single state, because that just sounds like more of kind of like what they were saying. It's like our system, but you're just dividing it up even more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more rigid, as they said, and I think that's like completely fair.
Mm-hmm. All right, next one. Ranked choice voting. The ranked choice voting system allows for voters to list candidates in order of their preference. In a sense, people vote for multiple candidates and rank them as their first, second, third, or more choice. Whichever candidate wins at least 50% of the votes is the winner of the presidency. However, if no candidate wins a majority vote, the ballots are counted again in a second round. During the second round, the candidate with the least amount of first choice votes is immediately out of the race. The votes of people who pick the eliminated candidate as their first choice are switched to their second choice pick. This process goes on until a candidate wins the majority of votes. Supporters of RCV say that this system guarantees that the candidate with the majority of support from the people wins the presidency, not a candidate with a small plurality of votes. They also believe that RCV makes sure that people vote for the candidate that they like the most, rather than voting against the candidate that they dislike the most. Many voters practice strategic voting because they believe that they need to vote for the lesser of two evils, which may prevent them from voting for the candidate they actually support. However, critics say that with new RCV ballots, voting would become more complicated, and many ballots would be filled out incomplete or wrong. These ballots would be discarded, and so would the votes of those individuals. Would the ranked voting system make the people happier or make things more complicated?
I don't know how I feel about that. Because,
Well,
I think some people really are stupid enough to not understand. But, like, if you go to, like, the voting booths and whatnot, when I went there, they walk you through what to do. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just don't see why they can't do that with this. And I feel like our system already is kind of complicated. Again, when I was talking about what it is, like, oh, you're voting for the electors, and then the government issues out this ascertainment thing, and then they da-da-da-da-da. Like, I feel like it is already complicated, so this saying, oh, it could complicate it more, I don't know.
I feel like these two are thou doth complain too much, is what I'm getting from them. It's like,
well, sure.
Here's a nice shiny thing, but it's still icky.
I think they're trying. Again, like I said, I think they're trying to do like, oh, pros and cons, but maybe they're not going about it in the right way.
Yeah, because I've always been a big fan of ranked choice.
I just look at
me too.
Yeah, but I mean, like, if you're gonna go for cons, you need to be more.
Sure.
God. Okay, I'm gonna shut up. I'll wait until we're done with this. Garrett, go ahead.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to focus so much on necessarily, like, their opinion. I know this is an opinion thing, but then after I talk about it, I want us all to kind of talk about what we think about them, not necessarily what they think.
Okay, let's keep going, bud.
Okay, this last one.
I think I know what their I think I figured out what their favorite one is, seeing as it's the one that they talk the most about.
Yeah. Proportional popular vote. One popular alternative to the current electoral college system is a proportional popular vote. The proportional popular vote plan divides the state electoral votes based on which percentage of the state popular vote a candidate won. This plan combats the electoral college's most critiqued part, the winner-take-all system. Supporters of this plan say that the proportional popular vote would force candidates to campaign in all states instead of focusing on swing states. They also argue that voters in majority Democratic or Republican states will feel like their vote counts, an example being Republican voters in California, which is a Democrat-filled state. However, there isn't any system without any flaws. One major problem that arises is, similar to the popular vote, the candidate that wins the presidency may not win a majority of the popular vote. Third-party candidates who gain more power due to the proportional vote system also may be able to stop any candidate from reaching the 270 vote threshold, which eventually leads to the House of Representatives deciding the presidency. Though this system has its problems, a proportional vote is the best alternative to the Electoral College. This system allows for all voters, whichever state they are in, to have a voice, even if the majority of the state doesn't share the same opinion. While the proportional popular vote doesn't put an end to the Electoral College, it alters the system in a way that will allow the people of the United States to have more of a say of who is in charge of the country. The last paragraph. There are clear flaws in every possible system of deciding our president. Not every voter in America sees the same news channels and interacts with people that have differing opinions from them. Not every eligible voter votes, and not every voter is educated on who they're voting for. However, it is blatantly obvious that the Electoral College, a system built on slavery and compromise, must be subjected more scrutiny before our country emerges with the best system possible. By looking at the ideals of our country and the state of the people in it, America has more than enough power to implement a new electoral system. And then they have their sources, which is history.com and nationalgeographic.com. So,
wow. Okay.
But yeah, so now we can kind of talk about it more. What do you guys think about either the Electoral College in general or any of the alternatives listed here?
We all know that, like, the Electoral College has, like, a lot of issues to it. I'm not a huge fan of it all the time because I feel like, especially given the fact that it oftentimes sensitizes, like, blue votes. A lot of, like, blue states get kind of hammered with like just due to the fact that they have staggeringly big populations.
Yeah.
And because of that, like, their votes don't seem to count as much.
Yeah, and I did want to throw this out there kind of during this too, because I did the math. So the state with the highest population being California, if you divide the population by their electoral votes, you get about 700,000 per electoral vote. And then Wyoming, the state with the fewest amount of people in it, if you do the same thing, you get about 200,000 votes. So one vote in California is like represents 500,000 more people than one vote in Wyoming.
Yes.
Which I do think that is a problem.
I just think that like they didn't make any argument against the direct vote, the direct popular vote. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The arguments that they made were so vacuous that I don't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That was Destiny tier bad.
Well, sure, yeah.
I'm sorry.
I would agree.
Like, okay. So, is there a problem with the popular vote? Yeah, there is. Like, a crazy person could promise a bunch of things and get elected into office.
But they already do that.
They can already do that because we have this thing called national parties.
Yeah.
That didn't exist when the founders were around. They didn't have a national party. There's no such thing as a national party. You had regional parties like the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. Now, the Democratic Republicans eventually became a national party and became the Democratic Party. But at the end of the day, like that argument fell on its face. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry. Like ranked choice voting, on the other hand, I think if we can't have a direct popular vote, then the ranked choice vote actually is not a bad idea, because then it will allow people. And it'll allow, I think, third and fourth parties breathing room to enter into the fray and become more of an alternative. Because structurally speaking, it's easier for them to participate. And one of the things I actually kind of like with ranked choice voting is it does create natural coalition building programs. So people who vote Green Party are probably most likely going to vote Democrat as their second party that they're choosing. So what we'll do is they'll get more people to come out to vote, I think, and allow other political parties breathing room to show their clout within the political prospects, and also show the viability of possibly appealing to those voters.
And I do think you also get rid of that stupid, I'm sorry, like at this point, it's freaking stupid. If you vote for Harambe, if you vote for like this stupid like third choice that's not even just like a third party, like it's just a stupid like, oh, I'm just throwing away my vote. I feel like it kind of gets rid of it. I mean, I'm sure you still could do that. You could be like Harambe, like go to
choice,
whatever.
You definitely could.
I feel like it decentivizes that a little bit more, because maybe for your third or fourth you will put like an actual candidate.
No, yeah, I absolutely agree.
And so like, and then let's get to the problems with proportional voting. So this is something I knew, I could tell that this was going to be their favorite, because once again, it's kind of like Destiny tier rad lib bullshit. How are you going to divide uneven numbers? Are you going to round up? Or are you going to round down?
0.5, maybe.
So like a good example is, so let's say that in Idaho, 10% of the population votes blue. So that means 10% of the vote of Idaho goes blue.
Yeah.
How are you going to divide that up?
I don't know. Maybe they would around it.
Yeah, there's it doesn't make any sense, because our Electoral College is not based off of a system of round numbers. Right? Yeah. So that it's on its face a stupid concept, because I mean, like, we could divide the Electoral College up to like 1,000 votes, and then maybe have something like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really address the issue. The Congressional District, the pros and cons of that is that it will make the system more rigid, because then it's a winner-take-all for each congressional county.
Yeah.
Upside of that is that it's going to bite the gerrymanderers in the ass.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was like, that's pretty wild.
So upside of it is that the gerrymanderers are going to get bit in the ass. Downside is that it is going to lead to certain counties getting preferential treatment, even though they already do.
See, yeah.
They already do. So
it'd be more hardcore, honestly.
It just basically it would get rid of the pretense of the importance of the state apparatus and focus on the counties at that point. So I mean, like most of the time, people who are proponents of the county system are probably political wonks that don't have a high opinion of democracy to begin with.
Yeah.
But
well, and I mean, I don't know. I think maybe my favorite one. I think it is a tie between popular vote and ranked choice, and the reason I say that is because I just think I honestly think it would be easier to get a ranked choice before a popular vote.
I think so too.
Republicans will freak out. They will freak out if we tried to implement a popular vote system. But I do feel like at the end of the day, if you have more votes, but you still lose the election, I feel like just as a concept, I don't like that.
Silly. Yeah, no, I agree.
And I understand that like people are like, well, what about states that don't have as high a population? And I'm like, well, I mean,
I think that at the end of the day, it really is important to understand that when most of the time when people use that argument, it's in bad faith. Like I can give a good faith argument to that and say, we should be concerned about the interests and issues of people in Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. But the thing is that with a system like this, it doesn't really discount them at all. Like popular vote, like the Electoral College does not really empower them at all. I mean, granted, everyone gets extra. Like you could say that these states maybe get more proportional voting, but they have to vote in large numbers in coalition with one another in order to do that. So, I mean, like, and what we've seen is, like, this red wall of middle America, or real America, really doesn't exist. Like, when you have states like Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, North Carolina, Virginia, basically voting blue, it's not as a result of, it's what's in their economic interests, right? And so... what we're seeing right now, I think, is a shift in the economic reality in our country.
Yeah.
And so people vote for their political interests, right? And oftentimes those political interests are economic. But sometimes they're sociological. So, Christian fundamentalists, they don't like gay people, they don't like change, they don't like people who, like, badmouth their Bible in any perceived way. They don't like Star Wars, they don't like Harry Potter, they just don't like a lot of things, okay? They might go out and vote.
Very anti-Jesus of them.
Yeah, they go out to vote, and they vote against, other people who they see as the problem. But most people don't think that way. So, I mean, like, the reason why I like ranked choice voting, and the reason why I like the popular vote, because the popular vote, I think, doesn't solve our underlying political issues, because it will still be a duopoly between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party.
Yeah.
But... the plus of that is the Republican Party will be out of power. Because the last time a Republican won the popular vote, I believe, was George W. Bush in 2004, and it wasn't by much. It was very marginal, like within like the hundreds of thousands. And so, that scares the living hell out of the Republican Party. But what we'll also do is force the Republican Party either to create more Republicans, which means they'd have to breed, and since most of them are old and they can't reproduce... that means they'll have to change their political positions or die as a political institution.
Yeah.
Or we can have a ranked choice system, which will basically minimize, to a certain degree, the amount of political clout the Democratic Party and the Republican Party has in each election. I say minimalize, not, like, get rid of it, because, I mean, let's really be honest, these are marginal political parties. But it will give third and fourth and fifth and other political parties breathing room to put their platform out there. And I think there'll be probably some surprises. And like I said, I think this actually does lead to more of a natural coalition building process.
Yeah. Well, and I do think too, and maybe this is me being a little kind of wishful thinking, I do feel like ranked choice would incentivize people more to look at the policy. Because, like, for me, if I were doing a ranked choice, if we were doing a ranked choice voting system in 2020, my first would obviously be Bernie Sanders. My list doesn't have any Republicans on it, at least not in like the top like 10 or whatever. But then it would be Bernie Sanders because but like I'm aware of his policies. But then when I had to choose my second choice, I feel like, okay, like I have to really look at the policies of like the other candidates. You know what I mean?
As a primary system, this would actually be brilliant.
Yes.
Because what it would really do is, I think that would be really fascinating to see how many people put Biden as their second choice for Bernie.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. Like, Elizabeth Warren... I don't
think that would be a lot of people. I think Elizabeth Warren would be my second choice.
But I think Elizabeth Warren, what it would force it all... And the funny thing too is it kind of forced the politicians to play a different game, too. Because it's not a winner-take-all system anymore. Now, you have to form coalitions within the political party in order to get the presidency nominee. So you can't be anti-Bernie. Because if Bernie's really popular and he has a broad base of support, it might not be a majority, but it is a substantial portion of the voting bloc.
They're not going to pick you as their second choice if you're anti-Bernie.
Exactly. So, like, and that's the thing that I think is really fascinating. So I wouldn't mind seeing this, like, if we were smart as leftists, we'd be pushing this inside the Democratic, party primary process. Because that's how this shit begins. You have to force a political party to adopt these things, and then force states to adopt these rules, to adopt this process. You begin to do that over time. Eventually, other states are going to copy it, and then maybe we'll get rid of the Electoral College by having every state basically process itself by ranked choice, and then basically deposit off electors based off of that, I guess. Or we just get rid of the Electoral College altogether, and we just have ranked choice voting with the popular vote.
Yeah, I think that's why I like ranked choice, though, is it incentivizes, like, nuance in it, where, like, people have to really consider, like, all aspects of the party. Because if you look at it in the two-party system, specifically under the Democrat side, like, during the primaries in particular, like, Biden was going to win. I really think there was no getting around that, but they would have really had to consider a lot of different, like, options down that path.
Well, what it also does is... Go ahead, Garrett, sorry.
Well, and I do think you get rid of, like, sneaky little tactics of having Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar drop out the last minute. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you can't do those sneaky little moves of now it's Biden or Bernie. Like, you know what I mean? Or, like,
it cuts that out.
Away from, potentially Bernie, because who knows? Maybe some people would have had Bernie as their second choice, but then their vote is just...
And so what it really comes down to is that what it will also do is naturally form natural coalitions.
Yes.
So when I keep saying that is that, okay, most Bernie Sanders voters, their second choice was going to be Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Just from policy standpoints.
Yes.
After her, I honest to God think that people probably would have chosen, I don't know, maybe.
I don't even know. I feel like then you would...
After that,
me
it would have been
third choice.
For me, it would have been Joe Biden as number 3.
I think so for myself too.
And the only reason for that is that I just didn't. Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar gave me.
Don't forget about Yang.
Oh God.
Yang would have been at least at that time like the third, maybe.
No, I never. Anyway, getting back to my point.
Well, yeah, but.
Getting back to my point, the reason why I didn't like Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar is Pete Buttigieg was way too much. It was the Obama movement with all flash and no bang. So it was completely substanceless. It was completely substanceless, and Amy Klobuchar, I mean, that lady is nuts.
She appealed to a very certain demographic, and I say this because that was both my parents loved her.
Yeah.
And that was Republican-leaning people that still wanted to try and pretend they were Democrats.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, at the end of the day, what it'll also do is it'll allow, I think, political parties to have a healthier assessment of where they're actually at. Because right now, the establishment inside the Democratic Party has way too much influence over the projection of where the Democratic Party's at. I mean, when Bernie Sanders consistently takes away 30 to 50% of your vote in every election, you can't say that he's marginal. Like, even if he has taken 10% of your vote, that's still a substantial proportion of your party. It's no way majoritarian, but, I mean, it's still a substantial proportion of your party. And
yeah, I just think it's a good way to get concessions for people that make up a good portion of it, but not like the entire base.
Well, not just that. I think that like at the end of the day, it will force the political party to assess the fact that just because like only 30% of Democrats preferred Bernie over Biden doesn't mean that 70% of Democrats are anti-Bernie. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And polling within inside the Democratic Party constantly shows that he's by far and away the most popular figure inside the Democratic Party right now.
Yeah.
And the only person I think that beats him right now is Joe Biden, but this is pre-Afghanistan.
Yeah, and I don't want to relive too much of the election stuff. I was just throwing this out there because I think that
But I mean, it's assessments, right?
It's a good way to exactly. It's a good way to analyze it.
And I wonder if too, like, I don't know, this idea just popped up into my head. I don't know if it would be great, but what if, because obviously whoever wins the primary, they pick their VP. What if it was like a ranked choice system in the primary? Obviously the person who wins, but then that second choice becomes the VP. Like, it's not a system of where you had before, like in the general, whoever won's the president and then the person from the opposing party is the VP. It would be, whoever was the second choice would then be the VP. Like, what do you guys think about that?
I don't know.
I find that interesting. I just feel like you'd get some wonky situations.
Not just that.
Well, sure, but maybe that could appeal more to the coalition building, because, like, if we had a Joe Biden and a Bernie Sanders as, like, vice president... You know what I mean? I don't know.
I
don't know. I think that it takes away flexibility. So, like, if Bernie Sanders was VP, he had far less power right now.
True.
I mean, that is true.
So,
but, like, don't... And I say that, too. Like, just one more thing. Sorry, real quick. Because usually, I might be wrong in saying this, but don't presidential candidates usually pick their VP from a list of the people running already?
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
Like, if you remember, John McCain chose Sarah Palin and she didn't run.
Okay, well...
It's more of like an assessment of like what's going to be the best optically a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like, Barack Obama and Joe Biden ran against each other, but Joe Biden fell out really early in 2008.
Well, and then Obama picked him to like assuage like a lot of like white voters that were nervous.
Yeah.
And, yeah,
that was like the big reason for it. Yep.
I mean, like I think
that's why I say it's an octopus game. That's why Biden picked Kamala as well.
And also and I know like it doesn't offer as much flexibility, but if they are the second choice, ideally, if that first president were to die in office or be assassinated, then the second choice of that side would then become president, which I
that's true, and that's something to...
I guess it would make some sense, but I mean, I think that it would be... I would much rather the presidential candidate have that kind of flexibility, because at that point, they're running a campaign with the VP.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could see the pros and cons of both.
I'd have to give it some thought on that one. I do think it's an interesting idea, though.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I mean, I think that it could build more coalition inside a political party.
Yeah.
But practically speaking, I mean, I think that there's a little bit of more analysis we probably have to do. Because, I mean, I don't know. I think that it would be, like, maybe not, like, written down, but practically kind of like an unwritten rule of, if the person gets second place, it'd probably be a wise idea to pick them. But who knows? Yeah. Maybe that person isn't really popular in the general polling. I don't know. For the general election, I mean, like, I don't think that would work. I think Biden Bernie would be fine. I think that would have made him more appealing.
Well,
because then if Joe Biden dies, then you get Bernie.
Yeah, do you think maybe it would have possibly, I know, like, this is like let's try to be a little open when I say this, but do you think it possibly could have pulled those Bernie or bust bros, where they're like, I'm not voting at all because it's not Bernie, because he is the VP. There is and Joe Biden's very old.
I see Nick shaking his head. I don't know.
I feel like there is a situation where if you're thinking, I mean, again, they're not thinking like rationally, but if Joe Biden were to, he is very old. If he were to die in office, we would get Bernie.
I would say that there were some Bernie or busters that, if you're a Bernie or buster, you're in my mind initially you are thinking irrationally, because it's an emotional response. Everybody got there. Like, I had my week of being a Bernie or buster. Everybody had that initial screw them. I think that, yes, in some ways, if Bernie would have gotten the VP and, like, well, at least he is second place, he got this far, look how far the left is.
Yeah.
I think that may work, but unfortunately, I think so many of the Bernie busters were influenced by people like Jimmy Dore. And I know we don't want to keep talking about him, but, like, that was the mechanism by which most of these Bernie or busters came to their conclusions.
Really, the big one was, I think, Kyle more than anyone else.
Kyle Klinsky, Chapo Trap House, and Jimmy Dore, all kind of were the major promoters of the doomerism, Bernie or buster, black pill rhetoric that came out of it. And I don't know if Bernie being the VP nominee would have been enough to pull those voters back.
Yeah,
because I mean,
and it might be.
It's a hypothetical. I don't know. I think it's an interesting thought. Yeah,
I think it may have marginalized it a little bit more, or isolated a little bit more, because at least you would have the talking point of, like, at least he's VP.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do think it does make it a little bit harder to keep those same talking points, because it's the whole like, oh, the establishment won. But, you could see it as a partial victory because he is the VP. So I do think it would be hard to be like, oh, the establishment won again. Now we need to just abandon it altogether.
I don't know. Like, I think that, unfortunately, we're trying to assess not only a hypothetical, but also irrational perspective. Because this is primarily more of an emotional response.
What I would have been honestly more curious than the Bernie or Buster side, what I would have been curious about is how the Democratic Party would have run with it. Because the reason they ran with Biden and Harris was electability, which is what they hammered Bernie on. So it would have been interesting to see how they would have gotten around that at that point then.
I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't think having Bernie as a VP would have, like, made people not come out to vote, because you still have the Biden element.
I don't know, man, because during the primaries they ran hard on he's not as electable as Joe Biden because he has radical ideas, and that scared a lot of people off.
I don't know. For me personally, I don't like the VP doesn't really matter as much, even though obviously they would become president next. But I don't think that if someone is really in your mind is like, this is the candidate I want, I'm gonna vote for them. Them picking like a VP maybe you don't like is gonna be like, ugh, never mind. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I think that once again we're kind of getting into, like, this is kind of uncharted territory to think about.
Yeah.
So I think that's why.
I think really, like, I think that there is a certain group of people that really have a strong myopic perspective of what populism, leftism is. And when Bernie lost, they didn't have the emotional or mental maturity to really kind of process it in a healthy way. And that's no slight against them, because many of these people are younger. Whereas many people who voted for Joe Biden, probably this is like their 90th time, like, participating in the primary, right? Like, he overwhelmingly was supported by an older voting electorate.
Yeah.
I think what's more interesting to see is that what this could do for particularly minority voices inside the Democratic Party. So African Americans, I think, would have more clout. Because with the ranked choice voting, we would have more of an understanding of where they're at. Because instead of keeping the bad people at way, because let's really be honest. I mean, I listened to Benjamin Dixon. After Bernie Sanders lost on Super Tuesday, he did a really great breakdown of explaining why the black community came out to vote for Joe Biden. And it is that the Democratic Party, with all of its faults, is at least going to keep the bad people away.
Yeah,
That's the way the African American community, particularly the African American community in the South, looks at the Democratic Party. Despite all their faults, they ain't looking to go further and coming after me. That's the Republican Party. They're not. They're looking to.
Yeah, the Republican Party will literally strip rights away if they can. Like,
I mean, the Democratic Party is not looking to take away my vote. The Republican Party is that way. And so, if the African American community is giving more voice, I'd be interested to see that, just from an analytical perspective. Because then I think for the first time we'd actually have a better understanding where the coalition as it is at.
Yeah.
Mentally.
And I get you. And I think another reason why I kind of brought that up too, I know this is a hypothetical, but I think, when we look at history, a lot of times, people who were the VP do run and become the president. and obviously Joe Biden right now. And so if maybe we had like a new progressive, like AOC or whatever, trying to run for president, she couldn't get all the way, but she was then the second choice and became VP. That just gives her more political clout to then run later and then secure that spot.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, it is a hypothetical, but I do think it is interesting to kind of spitball about it.
More importantly,
it
it would force
too.
the establishment to kind of come to terms with its problem children, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately, like, we're the red-headed stepchildren of the Democratic Party.
That we are.
Yeah.
And I think that they were really shocked this time around by how well Bernie did. Now, Bernie did better in 2016 than he did in 2020. That's
true.
numerically true. But they did not expect him to do as well as he did.
Well, I think the difference is that he blew out like the first, like really almost the first 4 states, aside from I can't remember which one Pete Buttigieg won.
But not just that. Like what it really came down to is they're like, okay, let's see how he does when This is why once again I kind of go out against Destiny and the Rad Libs is that he blew out the Rad Libs.
Mm-hmm.
When there were many of them, he won. Now when they were able to like form their like Voltron-esque campaign with Joe Biden. Yeah, it turned the tables, but even then, Bernie performed very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't get blown out. Like, the rhetoric of that, I mean, from our perspective, he got blown out because he was winning. Like, he was getting tired of winning. He's winning all the time.
That's true. He really was like just a freight train for a little bit.
But from a historical perspective, he performed really well. When the establishment threw everything in the kitchen sink at him, he kept going. And he still won states. He still won districts. There's a significant proportion of the Democratic Party that liked what he was offering. And it forced the establishment of the Democratic Party to actually have to come to terms with it. Because that's 2 times in a row where he not only performed better than what they thought, but after they threw everything at him, he just kept coming. And they weren't able to stop him. Like, that's something substantial that we need to talk about. Bernie Sanders is by far and away the most successful left-wing politician in American history.
Yep.
No, I agree. I think it's actually part of the reason why Biden has done slightly better than I expected him to originally. I really wasn't expecting much of the presidency, but a couple of things that he's done, I'm like, wow.
Well, 2 plus 2 has to equal 4.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if it's all fine and good to go to your donors and say, oh yeah, everything's fine, but Biden can't go to them and say, hey, everything's fine, everything's under control.
Yeah.
When a third to 50% of your party is advocating for Medicare for all, free
Yes.
college, substantial reforms of how our economy's structured. Like, I'm sorry, as much money as you give me, that's not enough money to change that, because we threw everything in the kitchen sink at him.
Yeah.
Millions upon millions of dollars at him, and he still kept winning states. Like, I'm sorry, like, he didn't perform as well in certain areas, but he outperformed in other areas. There's certain things that this is a coalition. So we need to find a solution here. Otherwise, what's going to end up happening is that this disgruntlement is going to lead to either more radicalism, or eventually they're going to take over and they're going to be our enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not where we want to be.
And I do think to kind of shift over to kind of the Republican Party viewpoint, like, because a lot of people were like literally up Trump's ass. They were like he was their Lord and Savior. I think it would be interesting to see who their second choice would be, because from what I remember with the Republican primary, it was like Donald Trump like throwing out zingers to like Jeb Bush and all that.
It literally was like Donald Trump and everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see what these Trumpers, who they would pick as a second choice. Like, I don't know. Like, I think I would be interested to see that.
I think that not to pick on Donald Trump voters, but I think that they're in it for him. Like, let's really be honest, okay? Let me think. The most racist thing a Republican said before Donald Trump was Mitt Romney when he talked about, what was the 52% statement? And that's your typical Republican dog whistling.
Yeah.
Before, I mean, like John McCain, he's not an Arab, he's a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's some partial racist, I guess. when he really was just saying, no, we're not going to go down that road. I'm willing to give John McCain the benefit of that doubt.
I get what he was trying to go for. It just was...
It just sounded really shitty, right? Same thing. So, like, let me be really blunt. The Trump vote came out because Donald Trump was virulently, belligerently racist, sexist.
Yep. He was very good at punching down.
And he was the first politician to do that in that way since, you know, I want to say either Richard Nixon or George Wallace. Like, Ronald Reagan punched down, but he did it in such a happy, smiley, hippy-dippy way that it was really hard. You know, it was way more nuanced, I guess. Like, when you talk about welfare queens, it was always obfuscated. Now, we look back at it and say, okay, clearly it's about black people because the people who got hurt the worst due to these programs were black people. But at the time, he was able to sidestep and say, no, it's just people abusing welfare. Whereas with Nixon and with George Wallace, it was clear and present dog whistling.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I just wonder if maybe it could be an attempt, again, I understand it's like kind of expecting people who a lot of them are very irrational to think rationally, but I just wonder if it could at least be an attempt to pull them out of it, maybe just for a second, maybe in their mind, people who have Trump as their first choice are like, okay, I have a ranked choice voting system. I might as well put a second choice at least. Who would that be? And then maybe they could be pulled out of Trump's rhetoric and all his dog whistling and stuff, or even just blatant racism, and be like, okay, I wonder, maybe look at Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush or whoever. I just want, and again, maybe that's giving them too much credit, but I feel like maybe it could just be another way to at least attempt to pull them out of it.
I would say that would be the case if it was closer. Like, Donald Trump, wrecked the Republican Party.
Sure.
Let me be very blunt. Like, he pulled his voters out of the woodwork. These are people who hadn't voted in politics for some time since the days of Ronald Reagan, and there was a reason for that. So I don't know. I think that I would hope in a better world you would be right, Garrett.
Yeah.
But I'm cynical. I'm cynical when it comes to these voters, because once again you're dealing with irrational emotions to begin with, and so you're
even with it being as easy as just listen. Bubble in the circle, first choice. Literally, 5 strokes of your pencil, bubble in the second choice.
I found your answer, Garrett, by the way. So this is from MSNBC. This was when, the primaries were going on. While Trump was obliterating, the second choice amongst their voters was Ted Cruz.
Okay. Well, fuck. I mean, I don't like Ted Cruz. I didn't really like any of the choices, but,
I don't think he'd been any better.
Yeah.
I think that
he was something else
unfortunately, and here's the thing. Here's my point. How many let's just think about more modern. How many Republicans? Okay, how many Trump voters would vote for another Republican candidate? I remember that there was a poll that came out that showed that somewhere around 42 of Trump voters would not vote for another candidate inside the Republican Party.
Even if Trump wasn't an option? Okay. Well then, if that's what it is, then obviously this would
once again, you're I understand what you're trying to say, Garrett. So I'm not saying that in like I said, in a better world, this would be a rational way of trying to de-radicalize the far right inside the Republican Party. But unfortunately, the far right is in its nature absurd.
We're going to find out in the next topic.
Yeah. There's a lot of moving pieces to this that I don't know. I hate to break it to you, but it's as bad as the Democratic Party is. The wine moms actually do believe in things.
Yeah.
The Republican Party does not give a flying fuck about anything other than fucking up the other guy.
Yep. It's anti-everything.
It's anti those people. That's the Republican Party right now.
They don't really talk about solutions. It's more just being against the other side, or just any solution.
that's very common, like Nazi, like just
It's
any
fascist.
form, any form of fascism.
Yeah.
It's like very reactionary. It's reactive to anything.
Any nuance,
anything different.
Anything nuance is treachery or disloyalty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I
mean,
mean,
this is why they turned on Mike Pence. Like, Mike Pence...
Yeah.
Mike Pence 5 years ago was only known for being a homophobic, right-wing, fundamentalist fellow within Republican Party circles. He was the far right 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now he's a traitor to the right wing because he dared, you know...
Mm-hmm.
So let's think about that. So, like, once again, I'm kind of making my point is that, you know, maybe 20 years ago, if we had ranked choice voting, Garrett, you would be correct. Maybe the Republican Party would be less radical. Maybe the Democratic Party would be less, you know, sus right now.
Yeah.
But where we are right now, I think the Democratic Party can be saved. The Republican Party, it's off in Wonderland right now. It's hanging out with Tweedledee and Tweedledum. It's having tea with the Mad Hatter. Like, they're in their own little world.
Yeah, I think the best way to analyze it from this point is just how do we make sure they don't get power again? It's the only way to really approach it anymore.
Starve them from power until they can figure their shit out and basically peel out and kick out the fascists. Because, I mean, like, 2 plus 2 has to equal 4. If you want to survive in politics, 2 plus 2 has to equal 4. It cannot keep going. Eventually something will break down. You can just ask the Soviets about that, or you can ask the Nazis about that, or you can ask Mussolini about that, or Francisco Franco about that. I mean, eventually the system will break down. Unfortunately, if you create an incentive system that basically maintains the mantra 2 plus 2 equals 5, at some point reality is going to come in and pimp slap you.
Yeah.
Like COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how long have we been going? Because I don't know
for
if
a
I
minute.
want to...
So we probably should wrap up.
Yeah, I was going to say go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah, well, so no final thoughts?
I just think the final thoughts on this for me, at least, are there are better options than the Electoral College, generally speaking. It's a garbage system. I personally am very partial to ranked choice voting, but honestly, I come at it from a bias because I know it would benefit lefties a lot, so I'll admit that.
I think that preferable for me would be popular vote, just because I believe in democracy.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that's going to be a lot harder to get to, so I'd rather have ranked choice. If my compromise position would be ranked choice voting, because I think that's a far better system to get us to where we could possibly have a just straight up democratic direct election for our president.
Yeah.
And basically disempower the party system from controlling who our leader is going to be. But, that's what it is.
And I would agree. I feel like, consensus or what we're saying is popular vote or ranked choice voting. I think either one of those would be awesome. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like just ideas that the Electoral College just has many problems. It's not working. I think we need a new system. I think maybe revamping the system could energize some people because, a lot of people do lose faith in electoralism, whether for, on the Jimmy Dore side, like Bernie or bust, or whether, because I do know a lot of people that are like, my vote doesn't matter. And I do think you can make again, in Utah, I do think, again, it is more kind of doomer, but if you are a Democrat in Utah, your state's always going to be red. So maybe at a certain point, you're like, why do I even vote? And I just do think it could, whether it's ranked choice, popular vote, or maybe even like, something else, I do think it could re-energize those voters that have lost faith. Yeah. At least, hopefully. And
it's
maybe
about reenfranchisement, right?
Yeah, we could, for sure.
So we just
And so I do think maybe that's a great thing to end on. We don't always have to be doing the same system. We can change it up. Mm-hmm. We can always make it better, especially as progressives. That's basically what we're all about, is progress, making things better. So, all right. This has been Goodfellas History. If you've liked what you heard, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out. And we will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.